Political and administrative developments during the Ayutthaya period. The political and administrative developments of the Ayutthaya kingdom can be divided into three main periods as follows. 1. The early Ayutthaya period, BE 1893 to 1991. 2. The mid-Ayutthaya period, BE 1991 to 2231. 3. The late Ayutthaya period, BE 2231 to 2310. The early Ayutthaya period. This period started from the reign of สมเด็จพระรามาธิบดี the first King อู่ทอง to the rule of สมเด็จพระบรมราชาธิราช the second เจ้าสามพระยา The main objective of the administration during the early Ayutthaya period was to strengthen the security and political stabilities of the kingdom. The governing method of government was not systematic, but was loosely set up. Its vassal states were ruled by members of the Ayutthayan royal family or trusted allies sent from Ayutthaya. Also, they did have some degrees of sovereignty. The various types of cities in order of importance are as follows. 1. The capital city. The ancient city of Ayutthaya was the administrative, social, and economic center of the kingdom. The residence of the king was also situated in the capital city. He ruled the city through the Chatusadom, meaning the four pillars. Each pillar or ministry, which was called as Grom, was headed by a Khun or a minister as follows. Grom Viang or Muang. The Ministry of Civic Affairs was headed by Khun Viang or Khun Muang, who was responsible for the maintenance of peace and order of the capital city. He had authority to the judge in ruling of the juridical court in his area of responsibility. Grom Wang, the Ministry of Palace Affairs, was headed by Khun Wang, who was responsible for the organization, operation, and maintenance of the royal household, as well as the palace compound. He also acted as a judge in the palace juridical court, with matters occurred within the palace. Gom Klang, the Ministry of Finance, was headed by Khun Klang, who was responsible for all matters concerning finance, including the royal treasury and governmental finance. He also sat as a judge in courts concerning royal finance and taxation. Grom Na, Ministry of Agriculture, was headed by Khun Na, who was responsible for agricultural matters. He was charged with collecting taxes on rice called Hang Khao from farmers. He was also charged with the accumulation of the rice stock into the royal rice barn for emergency and war. Moreover, he sat as a judge in conflicts concerning rice farming, buffaloes, and cows. 2. เมืองลูกหลวง The princely cities were important cities located near the capital city. The king appointed his sons or high-ranking members of the royal family to be the rulers of these cities. They had some degrees of sovereignty in administrating, collecting taxes, and organizing armies of their own. Some examples of the princely cities during the early Ayutthaya period were Lopburi, Suphanburi, Prag Srirasha, Mueang Sawan, and Chainat. Some of them had to act as citadels to prevent enemies from advancing toward the capital. Such fortifying cities as Lopburi, Prapadang, Nakhon Nayok, and Suphanburi were usually 2 days away from the capital in all 4 directions. 3. The inner cities were puny cities, which surrounded the capital city of Ayutthaya, such as Prachinburi, Chachoengsao, Chonburi, Ratchaburi, Phromburi, and Singburi. Members of the Ayutthayan royal families or nobles were sent to rule the cities. They were in charge of sending the armies to support the capital in case of war. 4th, the outer cities were large in size, very far from the capital, and were governed by local rulers from their trustful indigenous royal courts. Some examples of those cities or states were Nakhon Ratchasima, Jantaburi, Chaya, Songkhla, and Talang. 5. The vassal states were usually far from the territory of Ayutthaya. They were self-governed under their own administrative system, but had to send tributes to the Ayutthayan court. Some of the vassal states during the early Ayutthaya period were Sukhothai and Khmer. During the early Ayutthaya period, the rulers of other cities were able to accumulate deep power and strengthen their armies, despite the fact that the Ayutthayan king had sent his most trusted members of the royal family to rule the main cities. These rulers always fought with each other, jockeying for the power of the crown. When opportunities arise, they would even attack the capital to gain control of the crown. The evidence can be seen with the event right after the death of Somdet Phra Intarasha in BE 1967. When Somdet Phra Intarasha passed away, as mentioned earlier, his 2 sons, Chao Ai, who governed Suphanburi, and Chao Yi, who ruled Prag Srirasha, marched their armies against each other to fight for the crown of Ayutthaya. However, they both lost their lives in the battles. The 3rd son, Chao Sam, who ruled Chainat, then inherited the crown and was enthroned as Somdet Pha Boromarachāthirāt II, Chao Sam Praya. Because of the state problem and of the kingdom becoming very large in size, Somdet Phra Boroma Tailokanath felt that the political and administrative system of the Ayutthaya kingdom must be reformed, which he did during his reign. The mid-Ayutthaya period, or the administrative reform period, during the reign of King Tailokanath. From the reign of Somdet Pha Boroma Tailokanath to the reign of Somdet พระนารายณ์ the Great. The Ayutthaya kingdom was very prosperous and strong, both politically and economically. The old administrative system was not functional or suitable for the massive empire of Ayutthaya. The big cities like Lopburi and Suphanburi had too much power and led to the conflicts and wars for the throne. The reform started in the reign of สมเด็จพระบรมไตรโลกนาถ During this period, the administrative system was divided into two major parts, which were the central administration and the mandala administration. 1. The central administration. King Trilokanath conducted an administrative reform by dividing the central administration two parts, which were the civilian and military divisions. In BE 1997, he issued the law regarding the hierarchy of civilians, military, and cities. The law was based on the Sakdina system, also known as the power over field feudal system, to rank one person above or below the other. Sakdina was the social status, right, and responsibilities of a person in the society. The ranks included Chao Nai, royal family members, Khun Nang, nobility, pride, commoners, and Tat, slaves. He also added two more ministries, Krom, to the former Jatusadom, which were the Ministry of Defense, Krom Phra Kalahom, and the Ministry of Interior, Krom Mahathai. The Ministry of Defense, Krom Phra Kalahom, was charged with military matters and personnel. It controlled the military both in the capital and its cities. The official title of the Ministry of Defense, Samuha Kalahom, was เจ้าพระยามหาเสนาบดีวิริธยาภักดีบดินทราสุรินทราฤาชัยอภัยพิริยานารากรมพหุสมุพระกลาโหม The Ministry of Interior, Krom Mahathai, was charged with all civilian matters and all its personnel in capital and all other cities in the kingdom, as well as the Kovi, unpaid labor. Throughout the kingdom, the official title of Ministry of Interior, known as the Samuha Nayok, was เจ้าพระยาจักรีศรีองครักษ์สมุหนายกอัครมหาเสนาบดี The authority and responsibilities of Jatusadom were reformed and increased as follows. 1. Krom Vyang was renamed Nakhon Ban. It was responsible for governing and administrating the capital. 2. Krom Wang was renamed Thammathikon, responsible for the palace affairs. 3. Krom Klang, renamed Kosathipadi. It was charged with taxation, crown finances, and properties, as well as royal commercial matters. As Ayutthaya developed, Krom Klang was also responsible for the operation of royal vessels for the transportation of goods to foreign countries. 4. Krom Na was renamed Gasetrathikar, responsible for examining as well as supporting agricultural affairs. 2. The Mandala administration. This type of administration was divided into three main parts as follows. The inner cities were the cities or Muang that surrounded and were located near the capital city of Ayutthaya. The concept of princely cities was abolished. All inner cities were under the control of the central administration from the capital city of Ayutthaya. These cities were classified as the Jatawa ranking cities. The king would send his trusted nobles to rule these cities. They were given the title of Purang under the supervision of the central command. The outer cities, Praya Mahanakon, were the cities or Muang that were located next to the circle of inner cities. They can be classified into four main ranks of importance: Ek, To, Tri, and Jatawa, respectively. These cities usually had their own small vassal cities. The king would send members of the Ayutthayan royal family or trusted nobles from his court to rule. In some cases, the local royalties were permitted to govern their own city. During this period, the major outer cities were Pisanulok and Nakhon Si Thammarat. Other outer cities included Si Satchanalai, Sukhothai, and Kamphaeng Phet. The vassal states were the foreign states and were located farthest from the capital city of Ayutthaya. The local rulers were appointed to rule but still were under the command of Ayutthaya and had to send tributes, such as silver and golden trees and their other valuable goods, to show allegiance to the Ayutthaya king. The vassal states during the mid-Ayutthaya period changed constantly. Depending on the political power of Ayutthaya, some of examples were Chiang Mai in the north, Yahoo and Malacca in the Malay Peninsula, and Khmer in the east. The administrative reforms during the reign of King Tailokanath had evolved into the centralization of government. The king controlled all the power through the use of bureaucratic system in governing his kingdom. Titles and ranks were conferred to the bureaucrats by the king himself. This was the beginning of the system of Thai absolute monarchy. The administrative reforms, even after the bureaucratic reforms led by King Tailokanath, there were a lot of overlapping requirements between the military and civil officers. For example, during wartime, civilian officers were required to join the army fighting battles. These matters were later reformed. King Naresuan the Great later made some reforms. He changed the system of sending members of the royal family to rule major cities, but rather kept them in the capital for his own political security. Instead, he appointed senior bureaucrats and local rulers who took the oath of allegiance to rule those cities. Later, he reclassified the outer cities into three ranks according to their sizes. They were Ek, large cities, To, medium cities, and Tri, small cities, respectively. The first ranking Ek cities were Pitsanulok in the north and Nakhon Si Thammarat in the south. Some examples of the second-ranking tall cities were Sawankalok, Sukhothai, Kamphaeng Phet, Nakhon Ratchasima, and Tenasserim. Some examples of the third-ranking 3 cities were Pichai, Nakhon Sawan, Chantaburi, Shaya, Pathalung, and Shumphon. The outer cities also had their own vassal cities. Those were classified as the 4th ranking Chattawa cities. However, the reforms negatively strengthened the power of the aristocratic bureaucrats, and they had the ability to seize control of the throne. เจ้าพระยากลาโหมสุริยาวงศ์ who successfully overthrew the young king พระอาทิตยวงศ์ was a good example. He then enthroned himself as the first crown of the Prasat Thong dynasty. King Narai the Great has tried to limit and control the power of the noble bureaucrats by establishing a new royal ministry called Krom Chao, which was headed by members of the royal family. This particular Krom controlled the non-military personnel and Kovi unpaid labor. It swung the balance of power back to the crown and the royal family. The late Ayutthaya period. This period starts from the beginning of the reign of Somdet Prapet Raja up to the fall of the Ayutthaya kingdom in BE 2310. It was the period that the power of the Ayutthaya kingdom slowly declined due to a number of revolts rebelling against Somdet Prapet Raja. For example, one revolt was led by the ruler of Nakhon Ratchasima. The other was led by the ruler of Nakhon Si Thammarat. As a result, the king began to mistrust his 2 chief ministers, Samuha Prakalahom and Samuha Nayok. He made some changes in their duties to balance the power of both ministers. The Minister of Interior got the control of both the military and civilian matters of all the outer cities in the northern region. The southern region came under the control of the Ministry of Defense, both in civilian and military matters. The eastern cities along the Gulf of Siam came under the control of the Ministry of Finance, in civilian and military matters, as well as for the benefits of commerce and foreign export. The authority of a minister was changed during the reign of Somdet Phra Chao Yuhua Barommakot. It was believed that the Ministry of Defense was found guilty of some deeds. Therefore, the Ministry of Finance gained control of both southern and eastern cities on all matters. The Ministry of Interior still got the control of the northern cities. For the sake of the security and stability of the kingdom, the administrative system could be changed and according to the current circumstances.